Welcome to the 7 core management behaviors, when and how to use them. This is Module 1, Introduction. This series is brought to you by John Dario and the Retail Management Formula, LLC. Let's start by answering an important preliminary question. What is management? Merriam-Webster defines management as the act or art of managing, the conducting or supervising of something, such as a business. In our case, since this course is geared toward retail managers, we are focusing on management of people. Therefore, for our purposes, management is the art of conducting or supervising people. Art is an interesting choice of words. The opposite of art is science, and indeed, we often see science and art compared against each other. So what exactly is the difference between science and art? Well, first of all, science is an objective discipline, while art is a subjective discipline. Objective means something that is not based on personal feelings or bias and is based solely on facts. Subjective means something that is personal or individual, and it is based on attitudes or opinions. So science is about facts, while art is about opinions. With science, there's one right answer to every question because every question is actually a mathematical formula. With art, there are multiple right answers, since there can be multiple opinions. In each scientific formula, there's only one possible outcome. Once you know the formula, you can find the solution to whatever the scientific problem is. With art, the solution depends on the situation. Each situation and each point of view requires a different technique or a different solution. So if management is an art, it means there are multiple right ways to manage, and the best management solution depends on the situation you are faced with. In other words, there's not a one-size-fits-all management style. How does it feel when a manager uses the wrong management behavior in a particular situation? To demonstrate this point, let's think about a few different situations. Think about a time when a manager or somebody else has tried teaching you when you already know how to do something. A classic case of this outside of the work world is a backseat driver. That's the person who's telling you where to go and how to drive while you're driving. Sure, it's helpful when you don't know what you're doing, but isn't it annoying when you do know what you're doing? Does being taught when you already know how to do a task make you more or less motivated to complete the task? Yeah, it's less motivated. I thought that's what you'd say. Now think about a time when a manager or somebody else scolded you about your performance of a task when you had never even been trained how to complete the task. Didn't it feel completely unfair to be criticized when you had never even been taught in the first place? Again, did that make you more or less motivated to complete the task? Perhaps you did feel more motivated, but was it positive motivation, or was the motivation due to fear or anger? How about a situation when a manager or somebody else praised you for something that you didn't even know you did, or you didn't even know how you did it? Maybe you got a good result by accident, or circumstances created the good result. Or even somebody else achieved the good result for you. Did you feel guilty receiving credit that you didn't deserve? Did the praise help you in any way to understand how to deliver the good result again in the future? In all of these situations, there was a mismatch between the management behavior that was used and the situation. Because of the mismatch, you felt bad about the interaction and you were left less motivated than you were before the interaction took place. That brings us to the objectives of this course. The course has two main objectives. The first objective is to give you a tool that will help you choose the best management behavior to use given the situation with which you are faced. And the second objective is to teach you some skills that will help you use the 7 basic management behaviors most effectively. Getting back to our art analogy, this course will help you know when to choose watercolors, oil-based paint, pencils, or clay given the task at hand, and it will give you the skills necessary to effectively work with each of those artists' mediums. So, put on your artist beret and let's get started with some fundamental concepts that are at the foundation of the 7 core management behaviors. There are 2 important concepts that you absolutely must believe and accept if the rest of this course is going to make a difference for you. First, you must have faith that most employees want to do the right thing. It is very rare for an employee to wake up in the morning and decide that they will purposely sabotage their employer when they arrive at work that day. Sure, some employees have varying levels of commitment to their job, and they have varying levels of ability, but most people don't choose to be bad at what they do. Given the options of being successful or being unsuccessful, most people will prefer to be successful. Second, if an employee is consistently failing to meet expectations, it's your fault as the manager, not the employee's fault. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that it can't be your fault if somebody just can't get the hang of whatever it is you're trying to teach them. Well, different people learn in different ways, and you do have an obligation to try multiple teaching methods until you find whatever works. And I'll accept that every person will not have the capability necessary to successfully learn and complete every task you can possibly give them. For example, I know that I will never be capable of pitching a baseball over 90 miles per hour. How would that be the manager's fault if I consistently gave up home runs because I couldn't throw the ball hard enough? It would be the manager's fault for keeping me on the team as a pitcher when I had demonstrated clear lack of ability to perform the job. And the same holds true for you. If you exhaust all management efforts to help an employee meet expectations and they just can't do it, it will be your fault if you keep that employee in a position in which they continue to fail. So no matter how you look at it, an employee's consistent failure is your fault as the manager. So these two concepts are absolutely critical to your success as a manager. With an assumption that you accept them both, let's move on to talk about how we identify various management situations. Potential management situations depend on two variables. The first variable is the capability of the employee involved. Skilled employees require different management behaviors than less skilled employees. The second variable is the time when the management behavior is being taken relative to the employee's action. As a manager, you can take action before, during, or after an employee has performed a task. Since we have identified two variables that determine management situations, the easiest way to picture possible management situations is through the use of a 2x2 grid. Here you see a 2x2 grid with employee capability on the vertical axis and timing of the management action on the horizontal axis. In order to keep our model as simple as possible, we imagine only two possibilities for each variable. For example, in this model, employee capability can be either low or high. Low capability is on the bottom of the grid, and high capability is at the top of the grid. Of course, in reality, there are infinite degrees of low and high capability. With regard to the timing of management action, action that comes before the employee's performance is on the left side of the grid, and management action that comes during or after employee performance is on the right side of the grid. So, for example, a management situation that involves an employee with low capability at a time during or after the employee has performed an action would fall in the bottom right quadrant of the grid, like the X shows. Now let's add the 7 core management behaviors to our management situation grid. Here you see the 7 core management behaviors and the management situation for which they are each best suited. Most of these are probably pretty obvious. For example, the management behavior of training is best suited for situations where the employee's capability is low and the timing is before the employee performs. That makes sense, right? And the management behavior of praising is best suited for situations where the employee's capability is high and the timing is after the employee has performed. That also makes sense, doesn't it? Well, think back to our discussion of the times when managers have used the wrong behavior with you. As basic as the management situation grid appears, managers use the wrong behaviors for the situation at hand every single day. And each time they do, they reduce their effectiveness a bit more. The best managers use a very simple 3-step process to minimize their frequency of this mistake. The management process is the process of selecting and implementing the right management behavior based on the situation. The ultimate objective of management and the management process is to get the maximum amount of work successfully done by leveraging the abilities of the members of the team. Okay, I've got a quick quiz for you. How many hours do you have in 1 week to get your job done? Do you have 40 hours? How about 45? 50? 60? Hopefully you anticipated a trick answer was coming. The reality is that your job, as a manager, is everything. You can only do everything by using the entire staff that works for you. So you actually have your hours, and let's assume you work 45 hours per week or more like most managers, plus all of the hours of your staff. If you have 4 full-time employees, that's 160 hours for them, plus your own 45, so you have 205 hours in the week to get your job done. you're responsible for maximizing the productivity of all 205 hours, not just your own 45. That's a lot of responsibility, so how do you achieve this objective? Well, you must get yourself into the position of being able to delegate as much as possible to as many people as possible. Then you must follow up to ensure the work is done properly. In order to delegate and have the work done properly, you must have people who are well trained. And to get them to be as productive as possible, they must be well motivated through effective feedback and performance reviews. Sound familiar? That's right. It's the 7 core management behaviors. Now that we understand what we're trying to achieve with the management process, let's talk about exactly what the process is. The management process is 3 quick steps that will help you achieve maximum effectiveness. Step 1 is to identify the situation based on the employee's capability and the timing of the management behavior relative to the employee's performance. In other words, determine which of the 4 quadrants of the management situation grid you're operating within. Note that it can be trickier to assess the employee's capability than the timing. That's due to the infinite degrees of capability that are possible and the fuzzy line that may exist between low and high capability. It may not always be clear whether an employee has low or high capability. This is a judgment you'll have to make, and it's part of the reason why management is more art than science. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the modules ahead. Step 2 is to determine the most appropriate behavior to use based on the management situations grid. In situations on the left side of the grid, this is easy, since there's only one behavior in each quadrant. Situations on the right side are a little more complex, so we'll talk about them in more detail in the modules ahead. And step 3 is to implement the management behavior that you selected by using the techniques we'll describe in detail in the next several modules. There are 2 things that are foundational to being able to do the 3-step management process. First, you must remember that you're a manager. I've heard all the excuses for why managers avoid doing management work. Some of them are true, at least sometimes. But every minute you spend doing the job of your employees is a minute that you're not doing your own job. Think about that. Don't get me wrong, there are right times for you to do non-manager work. Sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves, and for some of you with small staffs, that may be a big part of your day. But there are absolutely tasks that only managers can do. If you don't do them, they won't get done. So you have to remember that you're being paid for management responsibilities. Second, before you can manage your employees, you must manage your time effectively. Build your day around the manager responsibilities that you have. If you have experienced my time management workshop, you've heard this all before. If you've not experienced my time management workshop, go experience it. It's an important foundation to the management process. That brings us to the end of Module 1. Hopefully you now have a good understanding of the management situations grid and how you can use it to ensure you choose the right management behavior for each employee situation. And hopefully you're fully committed to the important role that your management behaviors play in the overall performance of the team. The remaining modules will each take a core management behavior and discuss it in detail. In each module, we'll dive into the mission of the management behavior, the details of the situation, and tips and techniques for implementing the behavior in the most effective way. We'll pick up in Module 2 with a deep dive into the behavior of delegating.